This hour, the Philippine Statistics Authority announces headline inflation picked up in August at 1.5%. This was faster than the 0.9% print in July. This brings the average inflation from January to August to 1.7%, still lower than the 3.3% a year ago. Still, the figure is within the Bangko Central's projection of 1 to 1.8% for the month, but remains below its 2 to 4% annual target. The central bank's full-year forecast is at 1.7%. National statistician Dennis Mapa said the increase was driven mainly by higher food and non-alcoholic beverage prices and a slower decline in transport costs.
Ang pangunahing dahilan ng mas mataas na antas ng inflation nitong Agosto 2025 kaysa noong Hulyo ay ang pagtaas ng presyo ng food and non-alcoholic beverages na may 0.9% inflation rate mula sa pagbaba noong Hulyo 2025. Ito ay may 69.3% share sa pagtaas ng pangkalatang inflation rate sa bansa.
Our first guest forecast 1.4% for August inflation. With us now for more is BPI's lead economist, Jun Neri. Good to have you back here, Jun. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your viewers.
All right, you came close. 1.4% you said, but it came in at 1.5%. What do you make of it?
Well, it confirms that inflation has bottomed last July and that the base effects coming from rice and oil are starting to fade away. No? This is probably why the governor last week sounded a little less dovish, Cathy, because if we extrapolate the data for 2026, we could exceed the target for some months of 4%.
So if we could exceed, how could that be dovish?
No, he's a little less dovish. He's probably foreseeing the changes in inflation next year. No? We will be on an uptick that could lead to a breach, and if we aren't able to control inflation expectations, that could lead the BSP to actually hike instead of cut. No?
That is really interesting, but let me take it from the perspective of maybe rice inflation, because we hadn't seen in this data yet the impact of the import suspension of rice. What impact might that have on inflation and consumer prices?
Well, it emphasizes even more the point that if we remove the impact of rice, we will see an even faster inflation print. No? Since we still saw a month-on-month, I think, decline in the price of rice for August, if the import ban and the higher tariffs are put in place, then we should see a spike or steady performance for rice. That will mean the year-on-year change in the staple will actually increase, no, as we move along to 2026. No? So if you look at the core, Cathy, which removes both food and energy, it's at 2.7%. No? So that 0.6% month-on-month change in the CPI is actually a bit concerning. Hopefully it isn't sustained at that level, because if it continues at that rate, then we will seriously exceed the target next year.
Okay, so if that's the assumption then shouldn't the Bangko Central governor and the policy board start to think about that and maybe hold off on cutting rates further?
They actually are. They actually are. They, in a press statement and an interview last week, the governor said that they may be already in a Goldilocks situation, that there is no longer any need to cut aggressively unless the economy's growth performance really deteriorates significantly. So it seems that there is a chance that they will stop at 5%. No?
Yeah, but he did make a mention during the press conference right after the decision that he was looking more at the output, local output, more than anything else, more than even what the Fed does. So to your understanding, might that mean a go-ahead for an interest rate cut in either October or December?
That was his guidance prior to the press statement last week, Cathy. but he sounded a little less dovish, a little bit more hawkish last week, no? Precisely because they probably had an estimate of the August figure coming in at much higher than anticipated. Of course, it's still within their range, but I think the midpoint of the range is 1.4. So at 1.5, that's a little bit surprising on the upside. Now, we can't rule out an October and a December cut since data in the U.S. continues to be a guide for the BSP. We will be seeing both employment and inflation numbers in the U.S. in the next few days. And this should provide some, again, additional guidance for them on whether they can continue with the cuts or will have to pause at 5%.
And do you think they might act on that, on whatever the Fed does at this point, being concerned and thinking peripherally about maybe the interest rate differentials between the Fed and the Bangko Central's policy rate?
Yes, that's a major consideration, Cathy. Among other things, they also want to reduce the reserve requirement ratio, which is at 5%, higher than many of our counterparts in the region. It's very difficult to reduce the triple R, no? Reserve requirement ratio, if they suddenly have to hike the RRP. No? So to ensure or to make it more likely that they will reduce the reserve requirement ratio, they have to be a little bit conservative on the policy rate. No?
Okay, well, we're not speaking in a vacuum here, and as you know, the topic du jour is really the alleged anomalies in the flood control budget and the need to have stricter governance. Given the back and forth on the DPWH budget in the 2026 National Expenditure Program, could the possibility of a reenacted budget be something that the Monetary Board might have to take into account in the way that it might impact economic growth in a bad way?
Yes, there are two sides to that, Cathy. On the one hand, if suddenly the government becomes too shy to spend as a result of these controversies, then the economy could slow down. But at the same time, and I quote Secretary Recto, if it hadn't been for these corruption charges or this dilution of the spending, meaning some of them being pocketed by contractors or other parties, then the economy would have grown at 6%. So that means that, you know, the solution to our slowing economic growth could not necessarily have to come from monetary policy. That if we can reform our governance structure, our political structure, then we can actually achieve higher growth rates without having to aggressively cut rates, because that has some side effects as well. No? Very low interest rates did not necessarily come out with perfect results for our economy.
Right, but at this point in time, could that be the last resort, that the last lever possible to save this economy from going below 5% is to cut rates further?
Yeah, that sounds logical, Cathy. But then again, if we do that, we might postpone working on the true issues, on the real things that we need to work on. It will just be a matter of time before we will also be slowing down as a result of these other elements. No?
All right, well, thank you so much for your insights and congrats. You came really close to 1.5 at 1.4. Jun Neri, our lead economist at BPI. The country's biggest business groups have had enough of corruption. 30 organizations came together to issue a statement declaring outrage over what they called the shameful, unabated, and excessive acts of graft involving some members of Congress, executive officials, the DPWH, LGUs, and even the Commission on Audit. The statement goes, "Mahiya naman kayo, tama na, sobra na, tumigil na kayo." The groups urged the creation of an independent body to investigate, jail the corrupt, and recover stolen funds. They also laid out a 6-point plan from gathering evidence and blacklisting errant contractors to signing integrity pledges and engaging banks and the Anti-Money Laundering Council to expose unexplained wealth. One of the signatories, the Management Association of the Philippines, warned corruption could hurt investor confidence. MAP Governor Rex Drilon told the big story, persistent corruption discourages foreign investors from bringing their money to the Philippines. He stressed that unless the problem is addressed, the country risks falling further behind its neighbors in attracting foreign direct investments.
the more people are convinced that we are a corrupt society, the less enthusiasm to invest here in the Philippines. So we better get our act together and clean this up, or we'll wind up, as usual, at the bottom of the ladder in terms of foreign direct investments.
The House Committee on Appropriations is currently deliberating the 2026 proposed budget of the Department of Public Works and Highways. That is a live picture there you're seeing at the Batasang Pambansa just before the sessions begin. The DPWH is pushing for an 880 billion peso budget next year, down by about 21%. President Marcos on Wednesday ordered a sweeping review of the DPWH's proposal under the National Expenditure Program to remove insertions or other irregularities. DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon and DBM Chief Amena Pangandaman vowed to finish the review in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, House leaders dropped their push to return the entire NEP to the DBM. Palawan's 2nd District Representative Jose Alvarez told reporters Dizon and Pangandaman offered to visit the House and fix lingering issues. Growing anger over alleged corruption surrounding flood control projects has prompted activist groups to throw mud and vandalize the gate of the Discayas St. Gerard construction. Activists sprayed the words Magnanakaw, Kurakot, and Ikulong on the company's wall and fence. According to Pasig PNP, protesters did not secure a rally permit and could face charges of malicious mischief. The camp of the Discayases plead to critics not to resort to violence.
Nalulungkot yung spouses Discaya, no? Kasi bakit nangyayari ito? Malaya po silang makapaglahad ng kanilang saloobin. Pero wag naman ho silang gumamit ng dahas, pananakot, vandalism, pambabato. Hindi na ho ugali ng maayos na mamamayang Pilipino yan.
Habang tayo ay nilulubog sa baha at putik, sila lumulubog naman sila sa pera na ninakaw nila sa mamamayan. Sa laula yung ugali ng mga magnanakaw at dapat silang managot.
Pasig Mayor Vico Soto also urged calm as ordinary citizens like security guards tend to be the most affected. He said momentum is now on their side in the quest to hold erring contractors accountable. It's not only issues and flood control projects surrounding the Discayas. On Thursday, the palace said First Lady Liza Neta Marcos is dismayed by the reconstruction of the Philippine Film Heritage Building in Intramuros. The project contractor, Great Pacific Builders and Gen Contractor Inc. is one of the 9 Discaya-linked firms. Based on its 107 million peso contract, the reconstruction should have been finished by yesterday, Thursday. But most facilities are still in the works.
Dapat lang nilang ayusin. At tignan natin kung ano pa ang magagawa nila. Kasi kung wala silang magagawa, lalo itong hindi magiging maganda ang resulta, might as well, humarap na lang sila sa kaso.
Meanwhile, during the inspection of an apparent ghost project in Paridel, Bulacan, DPWH Secretary Vince Dizon announced the dismissal of former Bulacan 1st District Engineer Henry Alcantara. Alcantara's successor, Bryce Hernandez, and one other official are also set to get the axe. Dizon added, Wawaw Builders is perpetually blacklisted from bagging government projects. Charges are set to be filed against Wawaw as well as SYMS Construction Trading. One of the figures dragged in the flood control controversy is Ako Bicol Party List Representative Zaldi Ko, who chaired the House Appropriations Committee in the last Congress. According to House spokesperson Princess Abante, Ko has been absent as of late since he is in the United States for medical treatment. The country's outstanding debt has breached this year's forecast, hitting a record 17.6 trillion pesos as of end July. Data from Treasury show the figure is 210 billion pesos above the full-year assumption of 17.35 trillion pesos. The said amount is also nearly 12% higher compared to last year. The bulk of the debt came from domestic borrowings at 76%, while foreign loans made up 24%. The Treasury says borrowing support key infrastructure and social programs. It notes the debt is expected to ease by the end of the year as over 800 billion pesos worth of domestic bonds are paid down. You're watching Money Talks. Coming up, President Marcos signs into law a new mining tax system. And our conversation with Energy Regulatory Commission Chair Attorney Francis Saturnino Juan on the shutdown of Siquijor. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back to Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Let's take a quick check on the Philippine markets. After that inflation result for August came in at 1.5%, a little bit hotter than 0.9% in July. PSEI opens Friday higher by 0.4% to 6,131. The stock market snapped its 5-day losing streak yesterday, Thursday, advancing by nearly 0.4%. Today's inflation report serves as a catalyst that could influence how the local bourse will perform in the coming weeks, according to Regina Capital, and we're seeing an uptick there in the first 15 minutes. The broader all-shares index also jumped by nearly 0.4%, with the sectoral gauges in the green. Let's take a look at the Philippine peso. It opens a tad stronger, 56.95 to the dollar. Peso strengthened yesterday, returning to the 56 peso mark. As for the 10-year government bond yields, they ticked down to 6.003% from the previous close of 6.013%. And taking a look at U.S. stocks, they've jumped Thursday ahead of a key jobs report by the end of this week. The Nasdaq rose by nearly 1%. S&P 500 climbed by 0.8%. Its 21st record of the year, and the Dow was up by over 0.75%. The benchmark 10-year Treasury yields ticked down to 4.176%, with the European and Japanese yields also paring back. Gold prices settled at $3,565.80 per troy ounce. U.S. futures pointing to slight gains when the markets open later tonight, Manila time. Nasdaq leading the gainers by over 0.25%. Both the S&P and the Dow are up by about 0.1% each. As for the Asian markets, they're up in the first hours of trading Friday after U.S. President Trump signed an executive order lowering Japanese auto import tariffs from 27.5% to 15%. Nikkei 225 jumped 0.8%. Australia's ASX 200 up by 0.5%, and Korea's Kospi rises by 0.8%. A respite for Villar-owned Premier Island Power REIT Corp, or PREIT, as the stock is still down more than 20% since the government shut down the operations of one of its key sponsors, Siquijor Island Power Corp. SIPCOR is a unit of Prime Asset Ventures, Inc., a holding firm owned by the family of businessman Manuel Villar Jr. Prior to the shutdown, it had been supplying power to Siquijor since 2014 under a 20-year power supply agreement with Province of Siquijor Electric Cooperative, Inc. With us now for more is the Energy Regulatory Commission Chairman, Attorney Francis Saturnino Juan. It's good to see you, Attorney Nino. Welcome to the program.
Hello, yes. Good morning, Cathy.
Yeah, so it's been 7 days since the shutdown. How is Siquijor Province doing on its power requirements without SIPCOR?
The power supply in Siquijor has normalized. They have not been experiencing any more power interruption. In fact, the president is scheduled to visit the province today. The secretary of the Department of Energy is there to also check on the progress of or the situation of the province of Siquijor, where we have already a new power supplier supplying the local cooperative there, Proshelco.
So the president's returning in as many weeks. The last time was June, just as the investigations begun. Would that mean then that there could be a chance that the state of calamity in Siquijor might be lifted?
Yes, I suppose that with the performance now of the new power provider, we can see that the power crisis has already been addressed.
Has SIPCOR filed a motion for reconsideration yet? Because SIPCOR was quoted saying that it intended to avail of the remedies under the law to appeal the ERC decision.
As of yesterday, we have not received any motion for reconsideration from SIPCOR.
So is that it? Is the ERC ruling final?
Well, they still have a few more days because they have 15 days to file the motion for reconsideration.
Okay, so what's the status of your review then of PREIT's other sponsor in the area? So SIPCOR is one, that you shut down, but they also have Camotes Island Power Generation Corporation, and I gather that there are also service delivery issues by CAMCOR.
Yes, and the Department of Energy is spearheading also the fact-finding there and the review of the performance of the power supplier. So we're coordinating with the Department of Energy so there will be no duplication of efforts.
What are the initial results so far?
I still have to look at the reports. So far, they're being asked to submit certain information as regards the plant operation, the fuel inventory, and the like.
And what sort of a timeline have you given CAMCOR to submit these documents?
It is the Department of Energy. It is the Department of Energy spearheading the efforts to look into the performance also of CAMCOR.
And then it's the ERC that, if indeed they find that there's anomalies, it's likely to issue that shutdown order that's going to come from your commission. Is that correct?
Yes, if we find that there is also enough basis to initiate or to open an investigation into possible violations of the power supplier of its obligations under its license and also under its power supply agreement to the local cooperative there, then we will proceed with the investigation and give all the opportunity also to CAMCOR to present its side.
Taking Siquijor and Camotes Island together, what then is the medium and the long-term plan for the province's energy supply just to ensure that there is stable electricity in the area?
Well, aside from these two areas, we have also several other major off-grid areas, and they have their own unique set of problems with their current suppliers and or the rates that are being charged their electricity consumers. So we're also sorting out all these issues in the other off-grid areas, and hopefully we'll be able to come up with the solutions so that we can mitigate the high cost of power, especially those islands where the consumers are exposed to the true cost of generation, and some of the supply given to them are not given the missionary electrification subsidy. At the same time, we would need also to take a look at the requirement for the subsidies under the universal charge for missionary electrification, because we would not want also to further increase the burden on all the universal charge payers, because this is a charge on all the electricity consumers, this universal charge. So we would have to take a look also at the subsidized generation rates that are being implemented in the off-grid areas. At the same time, there are also discussions on how possibly there can be some diesel capacities that can be displaced so that we can also reduce the true cost of generation in this off-grid and take advantage of other sources like solar and other renewable energy sources.
As a final point, how do you respond to critics who allege all this is looking politically motivated, belonging to the Villar family?
No, the investigation was initiated not by any political group, but by the consumers. It was initiated by the complaints coming from the consumers who were already so exasperated with the bad service that they are getting from the supplier of Proshelco. And it was just right that the agencies, the Department of Energy, NEA, and the Energy Regulatory Commission work on these complaints and address the problems of our electricity consumers there.
Okay, well, keep us up to speed on what goes on after the President's visit. ERC Chair, Attorney Francis Saturnino Nino Juan. Well, President Marcos has signed into law a measure seeking to simplify the mining fiscal regime and ensuring a fair government share from natural resources. The Enhanced Fiscal Regime for Large-Scale Metallic Mining Act sets a uniform tax framework, strengthening environmental safeguards, and lays out clear guidelines to attract investors. The law introduces tiered royalties and windfall taxes, ring-fencing rules to prevent profit shifting, and strict auditing of mineral sales and exports. The mining sector welcomed the reform, saying it provides stability and competitiveness as the country positions itself in the global critical minerals market. Former Philippine Airlines Chief Gilbert Santa Maria is the new president and CEO of Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation. He succeeds interim head Jose Maria Lim as MPTC gears up for an initial public offering and explores a merger with San Miguel's toll business. The company also announced leadership changes across its toll ventures. Luis Reñon was appointed president and general manager of NLEX Corp. Metro Pacific Water Chief Andrew Pangilinan will concurrently head MPT South, and Metro Pacific Investments Corp Vice President for Technical Finance Marisa Conde will join MPTC as OIC and interim CFO. And in sports, Alex Ayala booked a semifinal spot in the Guadalajara 125 Open after defeating Italy's Nicole Fossa Huergo. The win came hours after she completed her round of 16 match against Varvara Lepchenko, which had been suspended due to bad weather. Ayala edged out a tough first set and dominated the second to claim victory. She will face American Kayla Day in the semifinals on Saturday. And before we go, here are some of the shows you can watch over the weekend. Broadway hit Dear Evan Hansen hits the Manila stage. The Tony Award-winning musical tells the story of a teen with social anxiety who gets caught in a lie that changes his life. You can catch it until October 5th at the theater at Soler. And if you're up for a scare, The Conjuring Last Rites begins Ed and Lorraine Warren to their final case, the terrifying 1986 Merle family haunting in Pennsylvania. The film is also breaking box office records with the biggest R16 opening and the second highest opening day for any movie this year. Bring in the popcorn. That is it for Money Talks. I'm Cathy Yang. Catch us again on Monday, 9:30 a.m. here on One News. Have a great weekend ahead and see you Monday.